So welcome to Friday on the Pagan Perspective. This is Yeka, and this week we have questions from two different viewers, which are somewhat related. So I'm going to post those right down here below in the box and let you read through them. I'm guessing you've already probably heard them several times this week already, but let's jump into them. So the first one from IrisCrescentMoon asks a few different things, and the first thing that they ask is, do we use or have we used animal guides or animal totems in our practice? So for me, yes. Animal totems are somewhat of something that my family in general has used, and what it has been for us is a particular animal that we have felt throughout our life. You know, this is something that sort of came about as children, or is an animal that we've felt connected to or drawn to. And not everyone has one, but the majority of us do within my immediate family. And interestingly, all of these particular animals, with one exception, come from the same family of animals. And so that's really interesting. Anyways, I don't usually consider that to be the same as an animal guide, because for me, the totem is something that sticks with you for your entire life, or a period of your life, a whole chunk of your life, your whole childhood, or your whole, different period like adulthood or marriage with somebody or something like that. Now, an animal guide, sorry, the cat is pushing the computer around, is more like a representation, coming from more of an archetypal or metaphor of ideas, feelings, emotions, things which are tied to the symbol or idea of that animal. Whether that manifests in a journey that you do in terms of shamanic journeying, or that manifests in the writing or symbols that you recognize throughout your life, like when you're on a walk and you see a specific, a hawk or an eagle or something like that. So I don't consider them the same thing. I understand how some people do. There's a lot of information out there. You can get lots of books and whatnots on what each animal represents. I tend to not like that as much, simply because I feel like symbols can have cultural meanings, and those are very important, but they can also have very personal meanings. And I mentioned this before in the video on dreams, but what the symbol of a wolf means to me might be very different than what the symbol of a wolf means to you, depending on what experiences we've had throughout our lives. What books have we read? What stories were we told? Did we see one? Did one come and eat your cat? Or did you see one at the zoo? Or did you really like, the movie Alphas or something like that, So the second viewer is asking about familiars, and specifically what happens to them after they pass on from this world. So to talk about that, there's two different components. First, what do I think a familiar is? Now, I'll just put it out there, I'm a big D&D nerd, so the first thing I think of when I think of a familiar is what my ranger or druid would have. But I know that this is being talked about in a different context, and for some people, my sense is that a familiar is a specific individual, a non-human animal, who they have some sort of deeper connection with than with other pets or other animals. Is it something that has any significance in my life? No. It's something that I'm sure it can happen for some people, but it's really not part of my practice. I have very profound connections with the non-human animals that I live with. I love them very deeply and feel like I can really connect with them, particularly the mammals, because I feel like we are capable of many of the same emotions and can relate to each other on that level. But I don't see any more connection for me than that relationship. Now, the second part, which is really the meat of the question, is what do you think happens to them after they pass on from this world? I don't think that we do pass on from this world. I don't think that there is a spirit world that is separate from this and this world. In fact, I think that we are of this world, that we are part of this world and inseparable from this world, that what we are is a collection of matter or energy, depending on speed, that has relationship, that relates to each other. And that relationship, putting it back into somewhat more pagan terms, would be for me what I call the center or the spirit, the fifth element. And that it is the relationship between all of the elements that make me up, be that the carbon that makes the cell, that makes the tissue, that makes the organ, that makes me, or the specific electrical impulses that are happening that are firing in my neurons, or between my neurons rather. That's what makes me. And that's what makes my dog, and that's what makes the tree, and that's what makes all of the different living things that are part of and exist in this world. So from my belief, when you die, that community, those relationships cease to function. But the parts that made up that relationship don't cease to function. Those continue and are recycled into other things that are part of this world, that are part of nature. And in fact, those parts aren't actually the same parts as when I was conceived, when I was in the womb, to when I was born, to the many years. I mean, there might be a few, molecules here and there that survived, but for the most part, I have completely changed out the matter that I am with other matter. I have changed that out with the trees, I have changed that out with the air, with the soil, and I've exchanged it with what they had. So I don't see us as passing on from this world. I see us continuing on in this world in a different form, but not as I don't see a soul that becomes another being. I see a pattern that doesn't function in that pattern anymore and becomes part of a different pattern. So I don't think that they guide us to the spirit world, because I don't think that the spirit world is more than a metaphor. I have no problem with other people believing that, but for me, that just doesn't work with my practice. And that kind of answers the issue of reincarnation as well. I don't think that there's a soul, so other than the pattern of the relationship that is me at this moment in time. So I don't think that that same pattern can go on and be in the same form. But do I believe that we can have more than one familiar in a lifetime? Since I don't use that framework, for me, the question doesn't have application in my own practice. If it's something that is it part of your practice, I haven't really been presented with an argument as to why not. Now, I am filming this early. I haven't watched any of the other videos yet. This is actually the beginning of the week, because this week is my birthday and anniversary, so I will be away from the computer when it's actually time to be filming this. So anyways, so if one was to present me with an argument that said that one could not, then I might think, oh, well, maybe you can't, but I tend to be of the perception or the opinion that what works for you in your private practice, why not, right? So yeah, that kind of wraps up for this week. So, all right, take care, everyone.